Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is a retired fire captain from the Berkeley Fire Department in California. She has 25 years of service as a professional paramedic and 18 years as a professional firefighter paramedic. After being diagnosed with PTSD, she retired from the fire service. Since then, she has become a triathlete, completed the Escape from Alcatraz swim 5 times, and earned a bachelor's degree in business from Washington State University. She's a volunteer peer at the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat and hosts the podcast, The Firefighter Deconstructed. She lives in Pleasant Hill with her wife, Lisa, and dog, Harriet. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Christy Warren.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. I'm really honored to be here.
Christy, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
You know, I don't think I knew that I had it in me. I've always loved to write. I had a creative writing teacher in high school that I remember we had one assignment and, she showed me some different ways to write words instead of just, I walked up the stairs. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. And ever since then, I've loved to write, and I like to write little stories. I'll go to like a birthday dinner with friends and some funny things happen. I like to write about that and share it with them, but I never thought I had a book in me. And when I got PTSD, I just started writing. I started writing about some of the calls that were haunting me. And I just was like, wow, I have a book here. And then I've had a few friends that said, you should write a book, reading some of my Facebook posts. And I had my wife read one of the calls that I wrote about, and she came to me crying and said, she had tears running down her face and said, you have to write a book. People have to know what you guys go through. So I think I just happened to be over 50 when it happened.
Well, it's a wonder with all that you go through, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
For so many years. It's a wonder that everybody doesn't have PTSD with those traumatic events.
Yeah, they say that, nobody comes out of this job unchanged. The job definitely affects you and changes you, but whether everybody gets the actual, brain injury that PTSD is, where your physiology and your brain changes and the chemicals change and the sizes change and the little, your alert button in your brain, the amygdala, gets set on high 24 hours a day. Whether that happens to you or not is to be seen. But yeah, nobody walks away unchanged.
Do you have to learn coping skills, or can the injury actually heal?
The injury actually heals. It's a little bit of both. I think the injury heals through coping skills and through getting sleep. That's a big one because first responders don't really sleep very much at all. Through sleep, through medication. The medication actually is there for a reason. It's like no different than being a diabetic and needing insulin. Your brain stops making serotonin, and so that's one of the reasons why you need the medication. But yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both.
Well, once you wrote this book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self publish?
So when I wrote this book or this manuscript, I have a friend who's published a book, and I had her read it, and I remember she hugged it and she said, "This is so good. I have no doubt that you'll be able to. This will find a home somewhere." And she suggested I go to the San Francisco Writers Conference because I live in the Bay Area. And so I went there, and we were taking this one class about how to write your elevator pitch. And I guess an agent was in there and heard, and she actually approached me and said that she's really interested in my story, and to send her, what I have so far. And so, to try to make a long story short, over probably like 2 years of me poking her and saying, "Hey, have you read my stuff yet? Have you read my stuff yet?" I finally sent her like just the prologue, like just read the prologue, and I guarantee you'll want to read the rest. So she read the prologue, and then she read the rest, and then she's told me, she said, your story's incredible, but your manuscript's not ready. She says, I really suggest that you find this woman named Brooke Warner, who is a memoir author or coach and a book coach. And so I found Brooke Warner, and she took me on and helped me mold my manuscript into a publishable book. And then when I started thinking about the different possibilities of publishing, everybody, well, if I was younger, I think I would have for sure waited out to find an agent and gone the traditional way if I could. But when I weighed the pros and cons of all of them, I ended up going with the hybrid publisher because I maintain control over my book. Is like, this is my story, and I didn't want a publisher saying, yeah, we're going to change the title and we're going to take some stuff out here, and I just didn't want that happening. And so I went with She Writes Press, and they do all the same things as a traditional publishing company in terms of their distribution and professionalism and quality and all of that kind of stuff. But I retain the final say in everything. So I ended up doing that, and I'm really really happy I did.
They have a great reputation. I think Brooke Warner has built a wonderful community of women writers there for sure.
Yeah, she really has. And she asked me, why did I pick She Writes Press, and I said one of the reasons is I trusted her, and I got to know her through her coaching me finishing the book, and it's like I really trusted her, and so far everything that they've said is going to happen, and all that stuff has happened, and yeah, it's been an incredible journey with them.
Well, authors have so many choices and so many options these days, and people can pick and choose. And I think we have to invest in ourselves one way or the other. So a hybrid is just another investment in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it did cost quite a bit of money, and but it's kind of like, if you won't believe in your own book, how can you ask a publisher to believe in your book? If you won't spend your own money on your book, how can you think that some publisher is going to want to spend a bunch of their money on it? So yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you.
Well, you're a podcaster, so this is a podcaster interviewing a podcaster today. When when did you get involved in podcasting? Tell us more about your pod.
Well, when I was going through my PTSD struggles, I met somebody who has a podcast about, he's a retired police officer and who struggled really severely with PTSD and drug addiction. And he came out the other side, and he asked me to be on his show. So I was like, at first I was like, no, no. And then I finally said, okay, I'll be on your show. And then I was like, oh, I really kind of enjoyed telling my story, and I got some good feedback of people saying it helped them. And then when I, was starting to get ready to publish my book, I was thinking, well, I should get on some more podcasts and kind of get myself out there. And so, anyways, I did a podcast with somebody, and she asked me, she has a network of podcasts, and asked me to do a podcast for her. And at first, of course, I was like, no, no, I'm not good enough for that. And then I was like, well, what an opportunity to get people on who've gone through these kind of struggles, and people can hear their story, and know that they're not alone. And so that's been my biggest, push for doing it. And I get lots of emails from people, from first responders, saying, I had no idea what was happening to me, and now I do, and I'm going to go get help. And I have the family members on of people who have struggled, because families go through a really difficult time too. Wives and children and husbands, and so yeah, it's been really, really great, and the feedback has been really great. Like I said, in terms of it really helping people know that they're not alone.
I think you're right about the families being affected. The military families are so affected by their service, and I think any way we can help first responders or military families in any way, we should certainly do that, because they're living the same issues as their beloved family member.
Absolutely. And it's so hard for the families, because they don't know what the for first responder, or even in the military, they come home and they have no idea what their loved one saw or was involved with. And so many people say, I'm not going to bring the job home with me because I don't want to affect my family. And then when you don't talk to them and they don't know what's going on, it affects them even more, because they feel isolated and not just left out, but they don't know what's going on. And so, and yeah, and then just having their family member gone for so long and worrying about them, and it's just, yeah, the families go through so much, if not even more, I think.
Well, what did your fellow firefighters or people who have served with you, what have they thought about the book?
Well, they haven't read the book yet, because it comes out next month, but I've had a lot of people saying they can't wait to read it. And after I did have to retire a few years early because of my PTSD, and I did go back to my department and talk to them about my story and what happened to me. If just to let them know, if they are going through that too, that there is help out there, and something that we feel so much shame for. And that I was very well received, and it was pretty amazing how many phone calls and texts I got after that saying, "Hey, I've been struggling too, and what can I do?" And so I think it's gonna. I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed, it's gonna help a lot of people.
I'm sure it will. And a lot of memoirs, a lot of family members don't want these family secrets to come out. Are there any things in your book that will cause some of your fellow firefighters to worry about?
Yeah, no, actually, not at all. I never, my department, when I got PTSD, was very supportive. I never had any problems. I mean, some people have like just really horrible problems of administrative betrayal, and because they don't really know what to do with it, and they don't want to be associated, and there's workers' comp and liability and all that kind of stuff. But no, I never talked poorly of my department at all. I did say that, my department was not ready to deal with this at all. It was something that was never talked about. And I didn't, there were no resources for me to go to in the beginning. And now, since I've gone through this, and then another member of our department had to retire due to PTSD, our department decided, like, it was actually our union that said, we need to do something about this. And since then they've developed a peer counseling team, and talk about it, and really are looking at it and doing a lot of really great work. So yeah, hats off to them.
Well, something good has already come out of something bad.
Yeah, exactly.
What about any challenges with publicity? I know these small presses, even the large big five publishers, don't provide us with a lot of help with publicity. Have you found anything pre publication to do to promote the book?
Yeah, that's a good topic. Um, that's one thing I think people think, that in the big publishing houses, that you're gonna get lots of publicity and they're gonna take care of all that, and they don't. Like, there'll be one publicist that will have like 20 books on her or his desk to deal with. And so you're not going to necessarily get the coverage you expect, unless you're a celebrity. So I did hire a publicist, and she's been amazing. And yeah, getting on your podcast, and lots of things that I have not heard of, or I don't know anything about this industry. I thought I did, but I'm realizing that I really don't. Um, so yeah, so the publicist that I hired, Caitlin Hamilton Sumi, has been really, really amazing in getting my name out there, and their social media, and all the different channels there are to get my book out there. So yeah.
What about any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups you can share that improved your writing journey?
I haven't really been part of any groups. Brooke helped me immensely. Um, I really needed to take a class, like a grammar class, because English in school was a million years ago, and yeah, I find that there's a lot of like grammatical things that I come up against. I'm like, gosh, I'm not really sure punctuation, and it's kind of been learning along the way, and having editors, go through my work, and learning that. Like I didn't know until just very recently that that we don't put two spaces after a period anymore. I'm like, when did that change? Nobody told me.
When we stopped using typewriters.
I guess so funny. I had no idea.
Yeah, I
But
felt the same way. I did that same mistake and had to find and replace all my double spaces.
yeah, it was crazy. And I mean, it's almost a habit that's been just ingrained in me. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I really would like to take some writing, like actual writing classes. There's so many classes out there about, how to find your voice and develop a plot, and find an art, write your arc and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would really love to find a good writing class out there. That would be amazing.
Well, I think the only good thing that's come from COVID for me has been all of these Zoom meetings. And there's so many
Mm-hmm.
online classes throughout the country that you can drop into and learn so much. I never even knew what Zoom was until COVID, and now everybody's using it. But there's so many writing courses. I know here in my state of Texas, the Writers League of Texas offers weekly classes on some topic. And so it's so wonderful to be able to do that.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I should look around more for writing classes for sure. Yeah.
And then you'll be able to drop in around the country with your book as well into book club meetings by Zoom. So that's helpful not to have to travel all over the country.
That's an excellent idea. I will definitely do that for sure.
Christy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the passage you've brought to share today and then read from your book so we can hear your tone and voice?
All right. So this is somewhat in the beginning of the book, and it's a short little passage, but it kind of contains kind of the tone of the book. So this is after I became a paramedic, and I was working full time as a paramedic. I drove to Fairfield to work a Saturday shift. The bright sun and clear blue sky made for a beautiful day, and I was eager to run some calls. In the afternoon, we were dispatched to a suicide attempt. I was still a new medic, but I'd already been on a handful of these calls. We pulled up to a nicely landscaped house with a Fairfield fire engine already on scene. We hopped out of the ambulance and hurriedly grabbed our equipment. A police officer directed us through a wooden side gate and into the backyard. A middle-aged man in jeans and a plaid shirt sat in a chair. The man had put a shotgun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. The image before me was straight out of a horror movie. The energy we had rushing through the gate drained as we processed what we saw. Three silent Fairfield firefighters sat with slumped postures on the edge of a planter with tears in their eyes. "That's our captain," one of them said. I didn't know what to think or say. All I could come up was all I could come up with was, "So sorry for your loss." I couldn't relate to this man. I was so thrilled with my life at the time. Things couldn't get any better. Many years from this day, I would arrive at the same stage of my career, and I too would put a gun in my mouth and contemplate pulling the trigger. But for now, I was in love with this job.
Wow, Christy, that's powerful.
Thank you.
Very vivid. The imagery there is just chilling.
Yeah, thank you. I've been told it's a tough book to read, but it's worth it, I've been told. And it's yeah, yeah,
Raw. It's very raw
raw.
and truthful.
Mhm. Yeah, very truthful.
Did you have to complete any research or did you have to go back and figure out when certain things happened? I've heard a lot of people when they're writing memoir have to kind of do research to find out when certain events actually happen because our memories sometimes are faulty.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did, I talked to family members, like, did this happen like this, or is I just remembering it like that? Or, like ask my mom some questions, like, when were you divorced? And, when did this happen? Just to get all the dates, kind of in check. For some reason, when I start thinking about or remembering things, it was like everything happened to me when I was 9. It's like, okay, well, everything didn't happen when I was 9. So yeah, so I definitely did have to kind of go back and ask some questions and find out exactly when stuff happened, and even with work, kind of the years and stuff. But it wasn't too much, since it was all just kind of my stuff.
Well, I can't figure out, what year anything happened. So I would definitely have to look at my resume and find out where I was at certain times.
I'm the same way. Like 1990 is still 10 years ago to me. So yeah.
Exactly. Do you have any other books in you?
Yeah, I do want to write another book about my mother-in-law, who was an amazing person, and we had a really great relationship. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what, like, the focus is. She had a bunch of strokes, and so she had difficulty talking. Like, she could think okay, but she couldn't get the words out. And we took a trip to Italy and together, and it was an incredibly wonderful trip, and a lot of kind of funny, crazy stuff happened to us. So I kind of want to tell, like, our relationship and her life through through this trip. And it's funny, I'm really finding that sitting down to write a book is really hard. Like, this one book I wrote, Flashpoint, like, it just kind of wrote itself. Like, I just started writing and it just kind of fell out. But this, like, sitting down to write this has been really, really difficult. It's hard.
Well, it's a real tribute because not many people have such great relationships with their mother-in-law. So that in
Yeah.
itself is going to be very special.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a great lady.
Yeah. Well, one thing that helped me because I thought being an English major, we had to sit and write perfect chapters, in order. And I think writing out a sequence and just journaling all of those thoughts and those trips and those memories that you have of her might help. I took the NaNoWriMo challenge. I don't know if you know
Oh,
what that
good for
is.
you. I do. Yeah. Yeah.
But you commit to 50,000 words in the month of November. So I couldn't edit. I couldn't worry about punctuation. I just sat and wrote, just everything that flowed out of me. And that's a good way, I think, to get started when you're stuck.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. I started it last year, last year. But something got in the way. Something happened where I ended up being really busy. But that's a really, yeah, great idea. Definitely.
Does your family support your career as a writer? What do they think about this memoir?
They've been very, very supportive. Um, I had my dad read it and my mom read it, just because I wanted them to read it, since I did have such a challenging childhood. So yeah, I wanted them to read it before it went out in the world. And um, both of them have been amazing. And it was hard for both of them to read, But yeah, they've been incredibly supportive. And then my brother's just been amazing. And yeah, my kind of extended family, everybody's been really, really supportive. It's been really great. I'm really lucky that way.
It is great because everybody has issues with memoirs coming out if they're in it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I really try to make it about my story, not them and what they did, but more of, just what happened to me. And but yeah, they've been really supportive, even though they didn't come out looking incredibly flattering during my childhood.
Well, that's a lot of us. And looking back, rearing my three children, I think we all blame the mother, So we all want to have that push and pull with our mother.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Well, Christy, as always, our last interview question is our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
I think writers over 50 are like, I don't want to say better, but like we have so many more life experiences. And I'm almost like, yeah, writing a book when you're really young, I mean, is amazing, but I think it's way more amazing when you're over 50. And the nice thing about writing is you don't have to be physically fit or strong, or all you have to do is be able to type on a computer, or handwrite or whatever to write. And you can write into your, as old as you are. It's ageless, I think. And I think, like I said, as you get older, you have more experiences, and you just gotta do it. It's easier said than done, but yeah, you just gotta do it. And I think it's so important to not write for anybody else and write for yourself, and don't try to sound like anybody else. And that's the other thing too, is that usually authors over 50 have read so many books and will read and say like, oh, I don't, this author's amazing and that author's amazing. And it's like, well, what if J.K. Rowling thought she should sound like somebody else? We wouldn't have Harry Potter. And so just find your own voice and honor it.
I think that's very wise advice. I'm interviewing people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they're still writing beautiful work. And I think we can write just like swim the rest of our lives.
Yes.
And I'm just so excited to have you here and to share your service and more about PTSD that a lot of us don't know very much about. So I think it's going to be a very significant book. So thank you for being with us. And now we can count you among our authors over 50.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for having me. This has been really great.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's D-A-I-L-Y, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.